Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about the 2024 election. Not just the presidential, but also the down-ballot congressional races that Democrats are running in and how they now see an opportunity for an expansion in the House of Representatives in this coming cycle because of Kamala Harris being at the top of the ticket. Under President Biden, many Democrats were worried that they would not be able to win their down-ballot races. Not only was Biden really doing poorly on the national level in his head-to-head against former President Trump, but also Democrats were seeing really tremendous effects for the Republicans, where they were gaining in districts that Biden should have been easily winning. When Biden was seeing a lot of House Democrats calling on him to drop out, a lot of it came after the time that these House Democrats used their campaign funds to sponsor a very snapshot poll that was taken in the moment of all of this media controversy around President Biden, all of the sensationalism around whether or not Biden should drop out of the race. And what they found was in those moments, in their own home districts, exactly what they felt they knew from all along. Is that President Biden was losing in many of their districts, especially these swing districts. Even some New York Democrats and safe seat Democrats had come out and said privately or publicly that their internal polling showed Biden down in districts that he won by double digits in the last election. And with that, these Democrats also saw themselves down, narrowly outpacing the incumbent president, but not enough to have a substantive victory this coming November. And Joe Biden even revealed that in a recent interview when he was asked, what actually pushed you out of the race? What made you say, I need to step down? It wasn't just that his presidential numbers were bad, because he said that his data was saying the race was tied. And while I'm sure we can disagree, because the data externally said it was far more in favor of Trump than tied, at the same time, he acknowledged that it was the Democrats who came to him with data points and their own concerns, that they were going to lose their districts because he was on the ballot. Because he was on track to potentially lose, it would mean that there would be a tremendous negative effect for the Democratic Party in these down-ballot races. And so that's really what we saw in this consideration and conversation in the Biden camp, in Delaware, and all of these different places around whether or not Biden should step down and leave the presidential race. It was that these down-ballot races were a huge part of that calculus. And now, Democrats have a resurgence opportunity to win in this election. And the reason for that isn't really as difficult as you might think. It isn't just that Kamala Harris is doing better and so Democrats are doing better. It is that under circumstances where there is more enthusiasm on the Democratic side nationally, Democrats tend to do far better in the down-ballot races, even compared to the presidential race. In 2016, there were a number of House seats that Hillary Clinton won, but Democrats did not win. But with that in mind, Democrats still did gain 6 seats compared to the 2014 House map. It wasn't a phenomenal victory, and of course 2016 is a year where Republicans won a trifecta and Democrats really look at in a very negative light. But at the end of the day, even in 2016, Hillary Clinton saw Democrats gaining seats in the United States House. And the reason for that was that Democrats were able to do well in these districts, even with Hillary Clinton at the top of the ticket, because in some of these down-ballot races, Democrats do in fact find that the margins there are a bit better for the Democratic Party. And while you still see that in some of these races here, the Democrats are running even with Hillary Clinton, Wisconsin's a perfect example of circumstances where Democrats are winning the popular vote across the state, but lost on the presidential level. And in some of these districts too, you can see that Democrats do in fact outpace Hillary Clinton. In 2020, it was a bit different. In 2020 was really when all of this got a wrench thrown in it, because in 2012, Democrats gained seats in the House. In 2008, Democrats gained seats in the House, and it's been a pretty consistent known factor that in practically every presidential election, Democrats are supposed to gain. But in 2020, we saw something different happen, where Donald Trump did the opposite of what he did in 2016, where Republicans actually outran Donald Trump in many of these states and districts, and that's because he lost the election. This time around, we're starting to see a combination of the 2016 and 2020 election come into full force, where the impact of Kamala Harris isn't as well understood and as well studied, because you have, on one hand, a Democratic contender who's very popular, people are excited about, who might win this election. On the flip side, you can't gauge that perfectly, because at the same time, Donald Trump could very well see Republicans do better than him in these down-ballot races, and we could have a repeat of 2020 versus 2016. While these aren't perfect examples, I do think we are closer to Democrats gaining seats in the House, far closer to Democrats gaining seats in the House than losing them. Because even in 2020, this enthusiasm factor and this down ballot factor wasn't as much attributed to Joe Biden, because he wasn't as popular as Barack Obama was in 2008 or 2012. He wasn't as likable. The personality was built more around anti-Trump than being pro a candidate. That's different about this election. While I'm sure many Democrats feel that in 2016 there was a lot of pro-Hillary Clinton sentiment, that election was far more about the lesser of two evils than this one. I get it. Hillary Clinton brought in the same crowd sizes. Hillary Clinton brought in the same level of enthusiasm amongst women voters. That is shown in the polling data. At the same time, she lost key demographic groups compared to where Democrats should have been in 2016 to win the election. Did better than Biden because he made up for it amongst white suburbanites, but again, demographics groups too that Hillary Clinton did worse upon white suburban voters, specifically white suburban women. Kamala Harris seems to have coupled this all perfectly together, where she now has the Biden base, the Hillary Clinton enthusiasm, the enthusiasm from the left wing as well. When I say the left wing, I mean the more progressive wing of the party. It seems that the Democratic Party is largely way more unified, very reminiscent, though, of 2008 and 2012. And another point on that, too, is that with Kamala Harris doing better than Joe Biden, that is all Democrats really were hoping for in this election. Because in 2016, Democrats were facing a much bigger battle about winning House control. Because in 2014, Republicans had won 247 seats. There were some articles and some considerations out there. Could Republicans actually lose House control in 2016? And if the polls had gone the way they did, I'm sure there was a circumstance in which the House narrowed up tremendously. But that wasn't where we were, and it really wasn't the main focus of the election, and arguably neither is this one. But you will find that in 2014, Democrats were facing a far, far, far higher battle than they are today. Because in 2022, Republicans didn't have a slam dunk victory. They only won 222 seats, the exact number that Democrats won in 2020, which goes to show that in just 2 years, you can really see a flip. And here's the big thing, too. Democrats didn't win as many seats as they could have in a year like this. In 2022, don't get me wrong, Democrats did far better than they would have expected, but the national popular vote was still Republicans plus 3. Republicans were up 3 when they only won 222 seats. Today, Kamala Harris and the Democrats do lead nationally. That's not the best news for the Republican Party, which means they have very little room for error. And when you take a look at some of these races that were just the narrowest, Democrats only need 5 seats. Remember that, 5 seats to win House control. You can see, and I do believe now it's 4 seats because of the New York 3rd special election. So 4 seats to win House control, assuming all seats are completely filled. Arizona's 1st was decided by less than a point. California's 13th, decided by less than a point. We're already 2 for 4. New York's 17th, decided by less than a point. New York's 22nd, decided by less than a point. Already there, we have states and swing districts that are decided by less than a point. In the lean column for Republicans, Iowa's 3rd, Michigan's 10th, very, very narrow. And even over here in the Republicans expected to win easily column, in Colorado's 3rd, decided by 0.17%. Democrats have opportunities to win this election. But under Biden, it didn't seem as strong. You see, under Biden, especially after that debate, the numbers went down. That first presidential debate happened, and Democrats went from a 54% chance at winning House control down to 48%. Republicans became the favorite for the first time since the introduction of this betting market. And then it got worse. They hovered around 51%, but then the assassination attempt happened, and it dropped to 45%. Republicans were at 55%. That was a massive, massive gain for them. And it was looking like Republicans might have been on track for an electoral trifecta after that. Then came the RNC, but then things got better for Democrats, but even better when Kamala Harris became the Democratic nominee. Almost immediately, the numbers went up to 55%, 56%, 60%, 64%, 65%, and now Democrats stay at 62% in terms of chances at House control, all because of Kamala Harris. They have never been at a point this high, and that is tremendous news for the Democrats. They look at this and say, all of a sudden, we've now reset these districts. Because while you can compare 2016 and 2020, which are certainly important for historical context, Democrats' main priority isn't about expanding the House map like they did in 2018 to 2020, which didn't work out. It's about winning it back. And they know the districts they can target. Because this isn't a 2016 circumstance, where in 2014, Republicans had 247 seats. Republicans only have 222. They have no room for error at this point. In fact, 221. Democrats only need 4 seats to win House control, and they can get 4 seats, but only with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. And her narrowing up this presidential race, not only narrowing it, but moving it in the direction that is for the Democratic Party, has done things the Democrats really were hoping Joe Biden could do, but he wasn't able to deliver on. When she's able to narrow up battleground states with battleground swing districts, that matters. when her VP choice, Tim Walz, is visiting swing districts because he knows what it's like to fight in a battleground district. You can see in 2016, he held on in that House seat over here in Minnesota's 1st district. Tim Walz was able to hold on to this election. This was a Trump district. The Republican he ran against when he retired went on to win this race because that's how good Tim Walz was their candidate. He defeated this person who ended up becoming an incumbent because that Republican was also quite skilled. And so you can see that Minnesota's 1st was a perfect indication, too, of how close races can be won by Democrats when they are able to make gains on the national level. But he knows what it means to win in these districts, and so he's visiting them. He committed to visiting multiple swing districts across the country to elevate these House Democrats. And one thing that we haven't really discussed here is that now Democrats are no longer running away from the Democratic brand. They are no longer running away from the Biden-Harris administration because Biden is off. Now they're running towards Harris-Walz. Think about all those major headlines about under Biden after the debate. No major Democrats wanted to be campaigning with him. You didn't see swing district Democrats introducing him at rallies. You didn't see swing state senators calling him into the states to hold rallies. And while I do believe it is in the best interest for electoral chances of some Democrats to do that, for instance, if you're talking about people like Sherrod Brown, you're not going to want Kamala Harris to go into Ohio and be as prominent, maybe 1 or 2 rallies, but not as prominent as Democrats should be in a state maybe like Michigan, where bringing out the crowd can really do a benefit. In Ohio, you might want to distance yourself slightly. Don't even get me started on Montana, where John Tester probably won't even have Kamala Harris visit the state once. Maybe Tim Walz, because he's from Nebraska and they're from a regional similarity, but at the same time, maybe not. Because nationalizing a race was only negative for Democrats across the nation under Joe Biden. But now against Kamala Harris, it is massively moving in a direction that Democrats are hopeful about, and it shows that the House races are far better than where they were before. Because the betting markets aren't just the only indications we have of this. You can take a look, too, when you're talking about do voters want Democrats or Republicans in Congress. Republicans were narrowing up this race quite a bit when it was Biden versus Trump. I mean, the lead for Democrats never expanded beyond half a point. And now today, we're getting to a point where it's expanding beyond a point and could get even better as we get closer to the election. Democrats only need to do 1-2 points better than 2022 to win House control. That's what these numbers show. And sure, I'm sure they would love a 2018-style victory, but they're probably not going to get that. And so winning House control is as good as it gets. It also guarantees, even if Kamala Harris loses the election, because Democrats obviously are hoping she doesn't lose, but at the same time, if she loses the election, if Democrats are able to maintain House control, it prevents the Trump second term from doing anything in the first 2 terms, right? They could sure get in some Supreme Court nominations, which I can guarantee you, Alito and Thomas are out the moment Trump wins the election. I mean, out. They will steamroll that through the election. They'll be out. What we find here is that the House can block a lot of the other things that Republicans are hoping for. Remember those Trump tax cuts? Republicans had a trifecta for the first 2 years. They had an Obama-era type of trifecta, very strong mandate in the House, somewhat strong in the Senate. In the presidency, they had won in an electoral college upset. The Republicans heralded as a landslide. It wasn't a landslide. It was not Obama type. It was the, largest margin for a Republican in the 21st century, but the smallest margin when compared to Democrats that had won. But at the same time, Democrats did not have any opposition to block Trump from doing the things he wanted to do. With the House of Representatives, they can, and they probably will. The elections are now back and closer, and even better, what we've now seen for House Democrats. Another thing, too, that Democrats have now started to note is that their internal polling has completely turned around. Not only has it rebounded on the presidential level, but these Democrats that were slightly outpacing Biden are now slightly outpacing Harris, but she's up in these districts. When Biden was down 1 in a district he won by 10, these House Democrats were up by 4. Now they're up 14 because Kamala Harris has turned around the race. 10-point shift, 12-point shift, 5-point shift, all around shifts, all moving in one direction, and that's towards the left and in favor of the Democratic Party. And so she has certainly brought Democrats to a point where now the House is absolutely back in play, not only back in play, but more likely than not to be controlled by Democrats, that Hakeem Jeffries is the speaker come the next Congress. By the 119th Congress, Democrats could very well be in control. And that's really good for the Democratic Party because it means they have a contingency plan should Donald Trump be elected. All in all, we have found here that Kamala Harris's effects have not only benefited her campaign, but have had tremendous down-ballot effects that we've really only touched on in the Senate. But I'm glad today we got to talk about the House because congressional elections are very, very important. And the House races have taken a turn in favor of the Democrats for the first time of this cycle, first time ever this cycle. And Democrats are likely very happy that now Kamala Harris being on the ticket has had a very big benefit for them in these down ballot races and have made the House far more winnable, if not likely to win, in this election compared to where it was under Joe Biden. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.